For completeness, let us talk about the climatic zones of the oceans. In the oceans, it's different to the land, because in the oceans you don't have different vegetation zones. In the oceans, what happens is, well, life starts with the formation of phytoplankton. Okay? And phytoplankton can form in all different climatic conditions. You know, you have phytoplankton can form in warm regions, and phytoplankton can form in very cold regions. Okay. However, there are distinct different species that only live in warm water. There are warm water species and there are cold water species. So what you can do is you can, based on the temperature distribution on the ocean, you can define some type of climatic zones. Okay, based on temperature. So let's have a look at the temperature distribution in the ocean. Okay, let's click on that. The top image shows you the surface temperature distribution. Okay, the surface waters of the ocean. Let's talk about that first. Okay, have a look at it. What's shown here in colors are temperatures in degrees Celsius, and the lines actually show you contours. Contours are lines along which you have the same temperature. Okay? If you cross a line, you move to a different temperature. Okay? So in terms of these lines and the colors, you can see that the waters near the equator are the warmest, and the coldest waters, less than 0 degrees Celsius, are found in subpolar and polar regions. Okay, so in that sense, you can clearly define a climatic classification based on latitude, like in the first part that we had. Okay. There are some fine differences. You can see that in some regions there's a little bit colder water near the coast. Okay, and these are actually our upwelling regions where colder water moves to the surface. There are also horizontal currents which move colder water into warmer climates. So there's a little bit of a variation happening here. In terms of surface salinity in the ocean, is also shown here. And you can see some regions have a lower salinity in blue compared to other areas where it's more here in orange in the color. So, but what are the magnitudes here? What's shown are salinities in grams per kilogram, and you have a range of between, some regions have 30 grams per kilogram of salt concentration, others have something like 37. Okay, in some regions like the Mediterranean seas, you even have 40 grams per kilogram. But overall, it's not a huge difference in terms of marine life. These variations do not significantly influence marine life. So your climate classification does not rely on salinity. It's different if you go to river systems and estuary systems, because there you have freshwater species which are different from marine species. So on very small scales you get a huge difference in terms of what type of species you have. Okay, all right. So on the basis of that, if you want to define a climatic regions in the ocean based on temperature, you essentially come up with something which is shown in this map. Okay? You can see largely a function of geographical latitude, like in the first part of this lecture. Okay, you can define equatorial zones, tropical zones, subtropical zones, temperate zones, subpolar and polar regions based on the temperature, with a slight variations, not strictly zonal, because here shown is the influence of horizontal currents. You have so-called warm water currents and cold water currents that move warmer waters into colder climates, or colder water into warmer climates. They are illustrated here by currents. Okay. So that's what you can do, and this is what's commonly used to define oceanic regions, the climates of oceanic regions. However, the oceanic life is mainly limited by light and nutrient availability. And I said before that light is available in all regions, in all oceans. The intensity varies, but only in the upper 50 meters. So you have a clear concentration of the formation of life, in particular the start of the formation of marine life. It's plankton. The phytoplankton only forms in the upper 50 meters of the ocean. Okay. But can only form if you have enough sufficient amount of nutrients available. When we're talking about nitrogen, phosphorus, and micronutrients like iron, you need to have that as well. Nutrient concentrations are very sparse. Nutrients are very sparse on the upper layers of the ocean. The problem in the ocean is because of gravity, dead organic matter sinks away from the light zone. It sinks into the dark oceans, okay, where it dissolves and creates dissolved nutrients. And there's a big dilemma, because in the surface you have enough light, no nutrients, and at depth you have no light, but enough nutrients. Okay, so the mechanisms by which life is created in the ocean is actually through a nutrient supply into the euphotic zone, into the light layer. And it's a process known as upwelling who does that. It's a vertical movement of waters which have enough nutrients up into the light layer. It's called upwelling. The other process that enhances the phytoplankton production in the ocean is the nutrient supply by rivers. Okay, and because of that, it's a fairly regional process. You actually have a clear regional differences of where marine life forms and where it doesn't. And I show you a map of it. Okay, this is a map of phytoplankton production in the oceans. And so what is phytoplankton production? It's also called primary production. Okay, it's the formation of organic matter, plankton, from inorganic carbon compounds through the photosynthesis process. Okay, and it's shown here in units, in grams of carbon per square meter and per annum, per year. It's actually a flux of carbon. And this primary production can be estimated from satellite data of the green pigment of chlorophyll A. Okay, not going into the details here. You can create maps estimating the primary production. You can see it's not everywhere, and it can happen across all different climatic zones. Okay, it can happen in subpolar, it can happen in temperate and tropical regions, and it's fairly so. It mainly happens in on continental shelves. You get the biggest primary production on continental shelves. Continental shelves are the areas which are less than 200 meters deep, and that's where the process of, you have both the process of coastal upwelling and you have the process of the river supply of nutrients. Again, that's explained. Some of these systems exist year-round, and some of these systems exist on a seasonal basis. Okay, and you have zones where you have almost no productivity at all. The blue regions, and they are known as ocean deserts. Okay, no production of phytoplankton because you have to think in terms of marine food webs. It all starts with plankton. It's the marine zooplankton, which are the smallest marine species, marine animals. They feed on the plankton, and once you have higher concentrations of zooplankton, it's the small fish that can feed on that. So that's how the entire or most of the marine food web functions. Okay, so you can see this is the map of you could call it marine vegetation zones. So this is where marine life food webs are created, the areas here in red. The largest systems are also known as large marine ecosystems, and there are the equivalent to terrestrial biomes. These are the marine biomes that we're talking about here. Okay, there are regions of high phytoplankton productivity fueled by nutrient supply from upwelling or river discharges. Okay, study questions. Why is it important to map climatic regions? Okay, what are Mediterranean climates? How is the tree line defined in the Köppen-Geiger classification system? What is microclimatology? How do climate zones in the ocean vary from those on land? And what are large marine ecosystems? Okay, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you learned something today. All right.